Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters Plus here on France 24, our in-depth look at the stories that matter. In this edition, we investigate the claims of Russia's attempts to influence and undermine the democratic system in Europe. France, as one of the pillars of the European Union, continues to be a target. Russian international media has been engaged in a campaign to promote the far right and try to destabilize French society. And from their coverage of the Gilets jaunes to the European elections, we've uncovered a bias in storytelling and coverage aimed at promoting anti-EU views. Our journalists have spoken to eyewitnesses who've seen the infamous Russian internet troll factory from the inside and the proof that it's a project linked directly to the Kremlin. Its aim: create fake accounts, spread fake news, spread it even further via dubious websites. Our reporters Catherine Norris Trent, Dungelhoeff, Anya Stroganova with this report, a joint investigation by France 24 and Deutsche Welle.
In the countdown to EU elections, a ripple of fear is spreading across Europe. A fear that Moscow is trying to infiltrate the heart of its democracy, the parliament in Strasbourg.
The political entourage of Mr. Putin has a major interest in destabilizing Europe, and I fear that they will succeed.
They finance fascist right-wing parties who want to destroy the European Union.
He supports patriots who are close to the ideas that he's pushing himself in his country.
From party financing to an information war, we investigate how far Russia's influence in Europe really stretches.
It's easier for people to think, okay, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. And it's always very useful to have the bad guys at hand, especially during the election campaigns.
Trolling, persecution, presenting an alternative reality. This is the story of how so-called hybrid attacks on Europe are launched.
You come to work and they give you an old telephone and a bag of SIM cards, and you have to create fake profiles. It was a carousel of lies.
This hate campaign has basically destroyed my life.
The 9th of May Victory Parade in Moscow. A celebration of the defeat of Nazi Germany and the glory and power of Russia. This Soviet-era parade has been revived under Vladimir Putin, enlarged to show off military hardware. Today, Victory Day stokes Russian patriotism in the face of invisible enemies.
The lessons of the past war are still relevant. We have done and will continue to do our best to ensure the high combat capability of our armed forces and a defense potential at the most modern level.
For the past 7 years, ordinary Russians too have been encouraged to march in what's known as the Immortal Regiment, brandishing photos of ancestors who fought in World War II. It's a grassroots movement which has become a mammoth official event.
Our army is so dear to us. When I watch the parade, I feel full of emotion. I feel so proud.
A national pride which means many Russians are fully behind Putin's foreign policy towards Europe.
We're the best. Other countries are just jealous of us. These EU sanctions won't harm Russia. If anything, they'll make us stronger.
Russia is an old country. They consider themselves to be exceptional. And there's a lot of mythical elements in this. This fortress mentality is very much what the Russian propaganda now presents, that Russia is surrounded by hostile forces. NATO is coming closer. The EU has overtaken Ukraine.
The conflict in Ukraine marked a peak in tensions between Moscow and Europe. First, Russia's annexation of Crimea in March 2014, and then the separatist war in the Donbass. It proved a geopolitical turning point.
The developments in 2014, especially in Ukraine, they mobilized, or they made relations between the European far right and Moscow more active. After the start of the Russian-Ukrainian war, Russia was sanctioned, and as a response to those sanctions, Russia would try to interfere in the elections.
Vladimir Putin courted notably far-right politicians. Here, photographed with Matteo Salvini in 2014, back when he was a Northern League MEP. Now Italian Interior Minister, Salvini is seeking to unite the far right in the EU Parliament. In 2018, Putin danced with the Foreign Minister of Austria's hardline anti-immigration government at her wedding.
Danke, wiederschauen.
Recently, Germany has been in the spotlight. A major investigation by Der Spiegel and other media outlets entitled Putin's Puppets focused on the far-right party AfD, Alternative für Deutschland. And notably this man, Markus Frohnmayer, from the AfD Youth Wing.
Die Bezeichnung Sinti und Roma ist ein Kunstbegriff, der von Interessenverbänden in den 80er Jahren.
We obtained documents from the Dossier Centre, a London-based organisation financed by exiled Russian oligarch Mikhail Khodorkovsky, a staunch Putin critic. They claim to show an email attachment sent by a Russian parliamentary aide to high-ranking Kremlin officials in 2017, a plan to support their backers in Europe.
Candidate Frohnmayer. Probability of being elected to the Bundestag high. Needs support for his election campaign. In summary, we will have in the Bundestag a member of parliament totally under control.
Frohnmayer was elected in September 2017, and he's since campaigned for Crimea to be recognised as Russian and EU sanctions to be lifted. He denies all knowledge of the strategy document. And the AfD's head in Parliament distanced himself from the scandal.
I know of no cooperation. I wouldn't know where and how there could be. I have certainly not agreed to that with anybody or with any party in the Kremlin.
Members of Germany's ruling coalition have summoned Frohnmayer to appear before the Bundestag and called for him to resign. Meanwhile, during the last French presidential election campaign, Marine Le Pen scored a public audience with Putin.
I know that you represent quite a fast-growing element of European political forces.
And Le Pen's Russian links aren't only with the president. Thanks to its network of contacts, her party procured 2 huge, still outstanding loans from Russian banks in 2014, totaling more than 11 million euros.
I went to Moscow, I met with the bank, they said, OK, we'll look at your application. It was all processed perfectly legally. In the granting of this loan, there is absolutely no influence by Russian political power on the National Rally, the then National Front.
And yet, that has been thrown into question by material obtained by Russian hackers, Anonymous International. They revealed more than 60 text messages sent before the loans between a high-ranking Kremlin official and a person named as Kostya, believed to be a Russian ruling party MP.
With regard to Marine, today or tomorrow, the Front National will officially take a position on Crimea.
A few days after this, Marine Le Pen did indeed endorse the Russian-run referendum in Crimea. Ensuing text messages read,
Marine Le Pen has officially recognized the results of the referendum in Crimea.
She hasn't betrayed our expectations.
One way or another, we'll have to thank the French. It's important.
Yes, great.
Today, Le Pen's Crimea policy remains unchanged, and it's a cause pleaded by the man seen as her new Russia advisor, former French junior minister Thierry Mariani.
I know this region very well. I've been more than 10 times. No serious person can deny the wish of the vast majority of people in Crimea to be part of Russia today.
Mariani has visited Russian-annexed Crimea twice since March, including for a meeting with Putin. He tells us he's sure of being elected an MEP, where he'll press for an end to sanctions.
Continuing this policy of sanctions, which penalizes Europe and its farmers, as well as Russia, that's suicidal.
Polarization of politics, divisions spilling onto the streets. Some see the clear influence of Russian soft power.
The idea is to throw oil on the fire, to mobilize people who are already fired up, and above all, to create clashes between them. It's kind of fire-starting propaganda. For me, it's propaganda which seeks to divide our society.
In France, popular anger has erupted for the past 6 months in the form of the Yellow Vest protests. Every weekend, crowds head out to demonstrate, chanting anti-establishment slogans. Another regular feature, support for Russian state media outlets, such as RT.
French media is shameful. You need to watch Russian channels to stay informed.
The channel was launched as Russia Today back in 2005 by the then Kremlin spokesman and an advisor to Putin. Today, a vast network broadcasting in 6 languages around the world, RT has made its name covering various social crises: Brexit in the UK, the Catalan independence movement, and the Gilets jaunes in France. When RT France launched in 2017, the channel received a hostile reception from authorities.
When press outlets spread libelous half-truths, they are no longer journalists.
RT reporters still only have limited access to cover the Élysée presidential palace. We didn't find evidence of fake news broadcast by RT France in the past few months. Rather, a very particular editorial line.
Their aim is not so much to promote the image of Russia, but more to denigrate and discredit the liberal democratic model of the West, in order to further the foreign policy interests of Russia.
Afin de faire avancer les intérêts de politique étrangère de la Russie. Pour vous donner un cas précis,
to give you a concrete example, ahead of the French presidential election, the right-wing candidate Nicolas Dupont-Aignan received 20 to 40 times more coverage than in French newspapers such as Le Figaro, Libération or Le Monde. We can say that this overexposure of Eurosceptic forces is a way of mobilizing voters against the European Union.
Eurosceptic politicians are regulars, openly in favour of Brexit, France leaving the EU. And guests such as this man, Emmanuel Leroy, a former advisor to Marine Le Pen, are presented merely as political analysts. The same with Xavier Moreau, said to be involved in the strengthening of ties between the FN and the Kremlin. We asked to speak to RT France and were granted an interview with the head of the channel. However, we didn't have access to their journalists or newsroom. During a 53-minute-long interview, we were filmed. We were told for RT's protection.
I think if you want, we can share with you the...
Is this your alternative perspective, being anti-European, anti-NATO, anti-Macron?
People who claim that they're trying to label our channel only for one reason, to discredit it in the eyes of the public that have different political views. If you look carefully at what we do, you will see that we give the floor to every opinion, every political party. There are some parties who don't want to talk to us, like La République En Marche told us that they will not talk about anything with us during this election campaign. Anti-EU, anti-Macron, is that because we have critical points of view on Macron? But that's what journalism is about, no? To have different perspectives. And if it's critical to the existing power, well, that's part of the job. We are not following or supporting a specific political power. We are not afraid to invite those who are not welcome by the traditional media.
But without making it clear that they're close to the far right.
If the person has not committed any crime, why not have his point of view?
From soft power to a full-blown information war, Russia has made headlines around the world. At the heart of the global scandal on disinformation, a Russian firm, the Internet Research Agency, better known as the St. Petersburg Troll Factory. In February last year, a US grand jury indicted the troll farm and several of its staff on criminal charges of interfering in the 2016 election. We travelled to St. Petersburg to find out more.
We're looking for the Internet Research Agency.
They've not been here for a long time. There's a medical firm here now.
Did they move out a long time ago?
About 18 months.
Can we go inside?
No, the rule is not to let people in.
To date, these are the only pictures from inside the highly secretive factory, filmed on a mobile phone by a former troll. We obtained an internal document which appears to detail the names and dates of birth of troll factory workers, shifted 24 hours a day, paid under the radar in cash. It includes people indicted following the Mueller report, among some 200 employees. Many workers were, at the time, in their early 20s. We arranged to meet one former troll factory employee. Vitaly was a 23-year-old journalist newly arrived from Siberia when he was hired by the troll farm, attracted by the above-average salary.
This is an example of the kind of content we posted. Pictures like that stay in your head. It's both clickbait and psychological influence. You come to work, and they give you an old telephone and a pile of SIM cards, and you have to create fake accounts. It had to always be an account pretending to be a girl. You could put whatever name or birth date you liked. I could have taken your photo, for example. It would take me about 10-15 minutes. This is what a fake profile looks like. 8 photos, a few links. This one only has 38 friends.
After a few weeks, Vitaly realized the troll factory offices were home to a circular disinformation system.
I just had to copy and paste links in different groups. And it was news like, Nazis in Lugansk raped 10 children, or about explosions in Ukraine. A few minutes later, if my post hadn't been deleted, I'd see comments like, oh yeah, that's true, oh, that actually happened. And that's how the whole puzzle came together. There were websites making fake news, social media managers posting the fake news on social networks, and then straight away, trolls would come and say it was all true.
Vitaly says he stayed on, fascinated, simply to find out more. And then, after 3.5 months trolling, he quit.
When my boss asked me why I decided to resign, I told her this wasn't at all what I wanted to do. And that's when she said it. Us in here, we're on the side of the Kremlin. The other journalists are working for American money.
What are the links between the troll factory and Russian authorities? Some Russian investigative journalists have delved into these shadowy networks of power. Like Denis Korotkov, a policeman turned reporter. He tells us that the man behind the troll factory is Yevgeny Prigozhin, a Russian billionaire who made a fortune in the catering industry, said to be so close to the Russian president that he's nicknamed Putin's chef.
I am absolutely sure, 100%, that it's his. That's backed up by concrete facts. I'm not even talking about my interview with Mr. Mikhailov, one of the founders of the troll factory. His words are backed by gigabytes of documents.
We contacted Yevgeny Prigozhin by email for a response. He denied any link to the troll factory. Denis believes it's still up and running, albeit split up in several different hidden locations.
It's a complex structure with many branches, but it seems that the setup from 2013 hasn't changed. Apart from that now, we can say that the department in charge of overseas operations has grown considerably.
We went to investigate at the last suspected location of the trolls on record, allegedly integrated into the newsroom of websites owned by Prigozhin, known for publishing articles attacking Russian opposition politicians. It's believed these websites relocated secretly at the beginning of 2019, after at least 5 bomb threats against the building.
Where have they gone?
I can't answer that. They didn't say anything. They left discreetly.
Was that in January?
Yes, there were 15 or 20 of them. They worked a lot. They were here 24 hours a day.
All the evidence we gathered shows the trolls have gone underground. But it appears they're still very much active. A US online security firm, Safeguard Cyber, has just published a study into current trolling activity. From November to March, they scoured nearly 3.5 million social media posts. They found evidence of a sophisticated campaign tailor-made for the EU parliamentary elections.
If you look at all the accounts that shared content, their followers, and we mapped this all out, turned out to be that it is potentially half the EU saw a piece of disinformation during the study period. We saw evidence of targeting all 27 member nations. The most targeted relates to how many MEPs that country has. So not surprisingly, Germany, France are examples. And it's almost a one-to-one matchup. You can see if there's more MEPs, they hold more votes. In the EU, there's more bot activity.
Bots, algorithms programmed to spread content at lightning speed. Safeguard found that current trolling involves more retweeting and commenting on existing articles than fabricating of original fake news content. They saw partisan reactions to stories about violence at Yellow Vest protests, or an article written by Emmanuel Macron on the future of Europe.
And how could you be sure that it comes from Russia?
Attribution is hard. It's a complicated thing to do. Certainly, it's possible to fake that they are Russian. Our confidence level comes from a few elements. When we started out the process, we put in this database 600,000 bots. And those bots were created during the time of the regional conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So we can separate what happens against the general feed.
Investigating trolling can come at a price. Finnish journalist Jessica Aro was one of the first to shine the global spotlight on the St. Petersburg troll factory. Ever since, she's been constantly harassed.
Yeah, well, basically it's an ongoing series of crimes and aggravated crimes, which has been ongoing for 4.5 years now. It has included, for example, fake news in Russian, fake news in Finnish, claiming that I have brain damage, that I'm mentally ill, that I invented the trolls, that they don't really exist, that I am drug user and drug dealer, and trolls also have made so many death threats, fantasizing about how they will slit my stomach open and how they will poison me and how bombs should be dropped into my newsroom. This hate campaign has basically destroyed my life.
For Jessica, this is not simple abuse, but a deliberate strategy to scare others away.
Many people don't want to even touch topics related to Russia because they are concerned what might follow. So this is Russia just extending their, ways of oppression, not just to Russians, but also abroad. And it's not just me who has become the target, there are many others as well.
A report by Catherine Norris Trent, Dungelhoeff and Anya Stroganova, a joint investigation by France 24 and Deutsche Welle. See it again via our website, france24.com. This is Reporters Plus on France 24. Stay with us.